Welcome to the SBE podcast series, where we talk about currently and economically relevant topics with our network of academics and professionals. And today's episode is about entrepreneurship, and our guest today is Pomme Theunissen. Welcome here. I'm Dora Gal. I'm going to be hosting this episode today, and welcome. I'm very happy that we finally got the time to record this episode. I'm really excited about it, and I hope you're doing well.
Thank you for the invitation. Really happy to be here. Very curious to hear your stories.
Yeah, so Pomme is actually an assistant professor here at SBE, and we're talking about entrepreneurship and female entrepreneurship because she's also interested in that and doing research in that. But you're also doing research in other areas. Can you talk us a little bit about your research and your topics and what led you to do led you to pursue a career in academics, because you also had career in private sector. So can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, of course. So most of my research is basically anything related to entrepreneurship, close or far. I like entrepreneurial finance. That's an aspect I like. I like fintechs. That's an aspect I like. For example, crowdfunding is something I really have a large interest in. And I like anything which is related to gender in general. So combining the two, you automatically end up basically in female entrepreneurship. That's an aspect that interests me most. And if I have the choice really to do what I like to do, then it's focusing on female entrepreneurship, and especially anything that is related really to the specificities of being a female. So, for example, motherhood is one of the aspects. So what's so-called mompreneurship, like the combination between. That's something I like a lot. In terms of career and background, I actually come from an entrepreneurship family. So my parents were entrepreneurs. My uncle, to which I'm very close, is an entrepreneur as well, has been an entrepreneur all his life. So I basically grew up with so-called kitchen table knowledge in entrepreneurship. So always talking about the business in the evening and participating in the business. So my parents had a hotel business for years.
Oh, nice.
And so I was always put to contribution over the weekends and over the holidays. I always knew what my student job would be.
Yeah.
And then so that's on my father's side of the family. And on my mom's side of the family, we're actually academics. So in that respect, it's really not surprising that I end up in academia and doing research on entrepreneurship. I've studied here in Maastricht. And when I was done, I indeed worked a couple of years for the private sector, amongst others for a big international advertising agency. But I'm also a mom of twins. And when you have twins, 6-month-old twins, working full-time in an advertising agency is just not a realistic option. And they were looking for lecturers back then at the Department of Economics. Mm-hmm. I have an economics background as well. So I decided that, lecturing, being at the university was a very good idea. Yeah. So I did that for a couple of years. And I'm actually a very late PhD student. So I only defended my thesis 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in terms of age, I might be a bit older. In terms of academic career, I'm still very junior. But that's the great thing here. You have this chance to even later on pick up stuff you're interested in and develop it. And I always got the chance to be supported by my department that I could be able to do that. So
that's really nice. Yeah, funnily, I also have a twin sister. Oh. And my dad is also an entrepreneur in the tourism sector. So it's just I didn't know we have so much in common. But it's really nice. And to just talk a bit about entrepreneurship, so you've done research on it, and what do you think is the most important thing for entrepreneurs when they thinking about setting up a business, especially in the Netherlands? Let's focus on the Netherlands because I know it's pretty different in different countries, continents. So what do you think that is the most sought after thing also among entrepreneurs, and what is that they are missing maybe, or what they should focus on, and maybe
from both experience and research background, I'd say the biggest challenge is still financing. It's still finding the resources to actually finance your business. It's the very old story of the asymmetric information. It's the aspect of you have a great idea, you're very intrinsically motivated, you're sure it's going to work, but then you have to be able to convince other parties to follow you and to invest in you. Yeah. And especially in the beginning, in the first stages of your company, that's probably the most difficult part. I think in the Netherlands, we have a very stable and secure banking system, so that really helps, because banks still today provide the lion's share of financing, especially to smaller businesses. Yeah. Alternatives are there, like crowdfunding, for example, which is really big in the Netherlands, so maybe surprisingly so. So the US is the biggest market, also because of size of the US, obviously. Yeah. Followed by the UK and the Netherlands are very good, like top 5 in the worldwide in terms of crowdfunding. Mm-hmm. So somehow the Dutch are very open to like give and trust in entrepreneurs, both in terms of equity crowdfunding and in terms of lending. Yeah, that's a very dynamic market where they find their resources. Yeah. And especially for females, they have an advantage if they would go into crowdfunding.
Really? Yeah, in the Netherlands in general, or in general?
Yeah, in general.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. Actually, I always had like a good impression about Netherlands, because I always felt like it's such like a problem solver country. I don't know. Maybe it's not a thing. I don't know. I just got this experience. Like it's always like you have a problem, then you have a job, not something to cry about. So like it's really nice. And what is in your opinion, or like when you were doing your research, what did you find as like the perfect, or like the most most successful kind of persona when it comes to an entrepreneur? So like what does an entrepreneur need to succeed, other than financial help?
I think it's the blood, sweat and tears. Okay. Probably. Yeah.
Endurance.
So, endurance, optimism. Yeah. Don't count your hours. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I think that's the biggest. It's not, entrepreneurship is not an easy option. Most of the people that do it also really do it because they like it. They want it. There is a very dispersed view on either way. You'd have pull entrepreneurship or push entrepreneurship. So are you attracted into entrepreneurship, or do you end up into it because of lack of other opportunities? But very often what you see is that the ones that end up in entrepreneurship out of lack of opportunities, that doesn't work that well for them. Yeah. And the ones that are really intrinsically motivated and optimistic and know how to handle their finances, they're obviously the ones that are able to do so. Now, one of the things, one of the discussions, I think maybe this might not, for lack of better words, one of the conversations I often have is the difference between the Elon Musk and the Richard Bransons of this world being seen as entrepreneurs, and the baker down the street being seen as an entrepreneur. In my perspective, that doesn't make a difference. Mm-hmm. I often use the example of my hairdresser during COVID times. So she works on her own in her garage next to her house. She has set up shop there. And when COVID hit, she was very innovative, and she managed to get hold of a vending machine, and like within 48 hours would send an email around to the customers saying, hey, if you need any hair products, if you need your coloring set, you can just go to the vending machine and get it. I think that's very really nice. Entrepreneurial. She's probably never going to be the multimillionaire. She's never going to launch something into space. Yeah. But it is also entrepreneurship. And she works hard for her business. And it works for her. She's passionate about it. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah. And do you think it's like maybe it's like one person kind of like team. But like, what do you think is more important? The idea behind the startup, or the business, or the team that is making it happening? Because the thing is, there's discussion going on about it, and I heard either one of it more, but what do you think is more important? Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly don't have a clear-cut answer to that. Yeah. I think it's you need both. Yeah. If you don't have a good idea, you might have the best team in the world, it won't work. Yeah. If you have a great idea and a lousy team, it won't work either. Yeah. What I heard is more like you need a really good team, and you can like
make a bad idea work at some point to make it better. But if you have a bad team, like you cannot do anything. So it's also why, of course, you need like universities and everything to build your network with good kind of entrepreneurs and good people that you can start up a business with probably. And also, like, when we talk about entrepreneurs, what are their main, like, it's financing, also their main concerns, but also, is there anything, like, for example, like the location that is really limiting them, or maybe also the gender? So, like, is there something that you also think, like, other than, like, seeking capital, is there anything else that entrepreneurs should, like, take into account when they're planning to set up a business?
There again, it would depend also what type of business you're considering, right? So if you look at very dynamic startups, they often end up in hubs. Silicon Valley is the well-known hub for entrepreneurship. But if you're more on a smaller scale entrepreneur, you would choose to set up whatever endeavor you have, depending on where your customers are located or what your customers need, or if you have a service. Many entrepreneurs actually start their businesses online. And don't really, where location doesn't matter that much. It's more a matter of, can they find me, and can I offer a secure payment system if customers order online? Can I make sure to deliver my goods as promised? Do I have a proper after sales service? These are also the things that matter, especially in the early phases before you start growing the business as such. It also depends on what your objectives are. Not all entrepreneurs have a growth objective, and that's not bad. That's not a problem at all. If you are a mompreneur and you decide to have your business mainly because you want your financial independence and you want your flexibility in your working hours, and because you are a highly educated woman and you think that you can still pull things off next to motherhood, that's wonderful. But the last thing you want is having employees, because that only brings you more hassle. And that's fine. That doesn't make you a bad entrepreneur at all, I think.
So, like, since you mentioned, what are the main differences between, like, male and female entrepreneurs?
Well, mostly women go into different types of businesses than So it's more retail oriented. It's more services oriented. It's mostly businesses or industries which have lower barriers to entry, which also makes that there's much more competition and it's much more difficult to be very profitable. But on the other hand, because women are also known to be more risk averse, is that when they engage into such a project, they mostly really know what they're doing. If where a male would be more inclined to say,
let's do it. I can do it.
I'll see where I go with it. Women most of the time don't take that type of risk. So they have at the base already a different set of objectives. Then comes the financing. Most of the time, males are better at securing financing again. So they start with a larger endowment compared to females, which also makes growth prospects better. But the funny thing is, in terms of survival rates of female businesses are actually not worse than male. Quite the contrary, they're very comparable. So in that respect, even though they choose different businesses, they choose different sectors, they perform as well as males would do.
I guess that's where the risk aversion pays off.
That's what,
of course. And also you mentioned, so like it's different. So like the growth idea is more by the male entrepreneurs and not by female entrepreneurs. And sometimes when we look at these sort of differences, we always feel like it's something it's bad, or something that like females don't, like women don't own these big companies and they're not striving for, I don't know, they're not Elon Musk or something. But is it actually bad? Because sometimes, like as you mentioned, they become entrepreneurs because they became moms. So it's not like they never had the idea or the opportunity to become something like Elon Musk, but they never wanted it in the first place, right? So did you also do research on it? Maybe that like also about this divide, if there's a bad perception about it, that people think that it's a bad thing, or it's just like the way it is, and some people just read it differently than it should be.
Yeah, I think it's that. So the first thing is there are very successful female entrepreneurs that have set up huge businesses, right? So in that respect, again, I don't want to say that all the women are the smaller entrepreneurs and the bigger ones, but very often indeed the perception is not in terms of research, but in terms of conversations that you have with persons, etc. Still, there is the stigma that if you are a woman, you have the nail studio, and if you are male, you have the bigger.
I don't know. Yeah.
And it's difficult. And it's difficult to get away from that label and from that perspective, even though there is proof that that's absolutely not the case. And as capable as men are. But it's sometimes just an obvious choice and a decision that women make, that they just want to go to a different kind of business, and if that's not scalable worldwide, fine. Not a problem.
But also on the other hand, maybe if you look into that, like there are also not that many men who wants to set up salons. So it's also like females are more like naturally more interested in kind of businesses that are kind of like easy to get into but hard to make it really grow, and
which have these lower barriers to entry. Absolutely. And then another element is there is just, out of the share of entrepreneurs, only a third is female. And then just by statistical deduction, there is just more male entrepreneurs out there, more male entrepreneurs visible, and the smaller top of that, again, these Elon Musk, the Richard Bransons of this world, those are the ones that you really see. And there's just less of these women, which are very successful. It's not an ideal example, maybe out of the personal aspect, but out of the entrepreneurship aspect. Chanel was a very good example in her time of a pioneering female entrepreneur. She set up a fashion label, which is still renowned today, at a moment in time where in France it was not allowed for females to have a bank account. And she managed with angel investors to do so. And that's a great achievement. And that's also a great female entrepreneur. And I don't think that many people actually know that she was able to do all these things. At the height of her production, she was employing 3,000 seamsters. That's a huge amount of employees, even for our standards today. Go figure 100 years ago.
Wow. Okay. And you also mentioned financing. And then you also mentioned that females have a harder time to get financing for their businesses. And do you think it could be because of the aim or the topic or the sector of the business? So basically that they want to finance something that maybe there's a lower barrier to entry. You have to buy certain things. Whereas like when you're coding something, you just need a PC, or I don't know what you need exactly, but like it's maybe less capital in the beginning.
They're confounding factors. So there's several things. First of all, yes, it's a type of businesses. So if you take the example of banks, they're just more reluctant to finance certain types of businesses than others. But it is also, I think women in general, the biggest enemy of women are women themselves. Like, there is research that shows that if we negotiate, as women, if we negotiate salaries for somebody else, we're better at negotiating the salaries than if we would negotiate our own salary, for example. And I think most males don't really face that problem, or at least at a different scale than women would face that problem. So it's a matter of the type of businesses, how it is, the requirements they face, but also because women are not always as assertive in terms of going for what they need and defending their ideas and fighting for what they want. We're still maybe a bit more shy and
second guessing our talents and the belief in the whole idea, and if you should go for it or not. And do you think it could be also because of other duties that females have during their lives? So for example, also like you mentioned mompreneurs, but could you, like, you mentioned mompreneurship as like when you become a mom, you are more likely to set up also a business because then you have more control over your work.
Yeah.
But do you think that some people actually decide not to become an entrepreneur because of this kind of motherhood or something?
Yes, absolutely. There is also evidence of women that actually go out of entrepreneurship at the moment they have their children. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. I think that the biggest impediment would actually be mentorship. Yeah. I think that if there would be a way to broaden, and you have initiatives, right? In the Netherlands, in Flanders, in Wallonia, in any of the countries, there is really networks of female entrepreneurs, like empowering each other, helping each other, and sharing information. I think that that's one of the things that we don't do enough to help women to actually get their projects on their feet.
So you think that this kind of empowerment is what they need, actually? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So not anything else kind of support, but more like believe in your idea and just go for it.
And go for it. And then you can make it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think I actually experience myself. It's sometimes I feel like I'm second guessing much more than, for example, I'm studying finance. I'm surrounded by guys. And then I'm much more second guessing my ideas than they do. And sometimes I just have to grow out of it. I don't know. But with the motherhood and with the whole thing that you started two things together, what is like, I don't know if you've done any research on it, but like when you have a child, you're like emotionally, also like how your brain works, you kind of change a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like you're also your attention span and different things. And do you think it's actually better for setting up a business or worse? So like, is it in the same line?
There's actually really cool research which has been published not so long ago in the Journal of Business Venturing that shows that. So with MRI scan, they show that the brain cells that you activate when you look at a picture of your child, and then you activate the same brain cells when you look at the logo of your company. So it really literally, the business is your child. So they show that there is really an emotional attachment, which is very comparable to your children as an entrepreneur to your business. So yes, that's absolutely.
And do you think that you need same kind of attention and skills and
as a mom of twins, I'd say multitasking is a fantastic thing that you can learn. That's also something which is very helpful when you're an entrepreneur.
Okay. But you say that like it's better not to have employees, but if you want to grow, you kind of need employees.
If you want to grow, you need employees. You can't do anything on your own, right? But at least from how we approach this whole mompreneurship research, so I'm not doing this on my own, right? I have very wonderful co-authors which help me in this project, is that women. So we take mompreneur time as being, you start the business between the moment that you learn that you're pregnant and until your kid goes to primary school. Why do we take pregnancy? Because at the moment that you're pregnant, you actually have to start planning. Is it going to be daycare? Is it going to be granddad or grandma? Am I going to go work part-time? How I'm going to take care of my newborn? And then basically once your child reaches school age, primary school age, it is really a new milestone, because then the days are more structured, the hours are more structured. You know exactly, basically, how you're going to deal, besides the usual sickness that you always have with kids, etc. Right? But it's those first 6 years, and we cap it at 6 years, because 6 years of age is in most of the Western countries the age at which children go to primary school. And we look at what happens in those moments. And some of these moms, after that, the kids reach school age, that's also when they really start to grow the business, because they liked it. It is something that is profitable. It has growth prospects, and then really the business takes off. There is also a share of mom, and we did research on that says after 6 years, okay, now I stop. I stop with my self-employed status. I return to wage employment. And we actually check, okay, now what happens to your salary if you do that? So if you've been a mompreneur and you've been in wage employment until the moment basically you get pregnant, You have your 6 years of mompreneurship. In that period, does not mean you have a full 6 years of self-employment, right? You have an episode of self-employment in there, and then you return to the labor force. When you're going to return to the labor force, so one option is to return into the job where you were already before. Another option is to say, I'm going to do something else. And then what we find is that if you switch sectors of employment, you're somehow able to get a better wage after that, because you have acquired skills like creativity and management and planning and all these kind of things that you can show. But we also see that if you would stay in the same sector, then it's absolutely not a difference. You could as well have stayed home for 6 years. Yeah. In terms of your salary, it does not impact it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I also heard that, like, for example, if you switch jobs, like sometimes you don't get the promotion, but if you go somewhere else, you get like the promotion there. Yeah. And then this switching sometimes is beneficial for your career. And then it's actually beneficial after like skipping years and doing something else and then also doing something different. Yeah. But I also think it's a nice thing because I think we have only one life, and it's better to try out as many things as we can, also in our careers, not just in like traveling and eating and everything else.
And doing what you like. I think that's most of the things also in terms of entrepreneurship, is being able to plan your days and fill your days and do something you are motivated for and that makes sense to you, that has worth to you.
Yeah. And when a company or like when this business reaches like a level when they have employees already, do you think that females are better leaders or more like men? Or did you do any research on it, or have you found any papers on it?
So I did not do any research on that. Female founders in general are no different. So there is no clear better or worse. What you see is that, especially if you have mixed teams, that's where the benefit lies. So when you're able to have management which is composed both male, females, but also diversity in general, right? The old boys network, that's what's not working for a company. Company needs diversity in all aspects. Yeah. And that's when they have the best growth perspectives.
Yeah, for example, I also, but it's also diversity. We also need that because we like, I don't know where I heard it from, so I cannot cite anything. But also with team sports, I heard that like males are better at teamwork than females, because sometimes females are not, like, maybe it's from back of the times when they had to go hunting and together they had to work together, and whereas like females, they just went together and collected the berries and everything. You didn't need that kind of teamwork maybe that you needed for getting I don't know, mammals. So, I don't know. And do you think that it's actually the case that also like just a male kind of setup for a business works better compared to just a female, but the best is the mixed? Or you don't have any kind of data on it?
I'm not aware of any evidence of that. Yeah, okay. I'm just aware of the evidence of like mixing and divergent. That's the best way to go. Well, whether a pure female or a pure male team is more efficient, I don't know.
And in terms of financing, so for example, you said that males are better able to attract financing.
But that's also part of. So, for example, if you look at maybe more traditional equity financing, so venture capitalists or angel investors, venture capitalists and angel investors are traditionally also males. Yeah. So for them, it's more of a natural way to identify with another male entrepreneur and see what he's doing. Now again, we see more and more also female VCs and female angel investors, but they don't necessarily go as much for the female entrepreneur. Yeah. So in that respect, also again, you could say, is that out of a rational decision? Yeah. Because indeed the female entrepreneur shows a less well-developed project or is less realistic in her goals or whatsoever? Or is it not a rational decision? Is it merely out of, you could call it discrimination into that respect, right? It's just not what I'm used to invest in, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And there again, I come back at crowdfunding. So somehow female entrepreneurs manage in a crowdfunding setting, they manage to really convey their message in such a way that they are very convincing to the crowd.
Yeah.
And that's also what you call the wisdom of the crowd. So the crowd together basically decides what is a proper investment and what is not. And there you really see that they benefit from that.
Yeah.
Is that because it's also a supply side effect? So because you also have more females investing in crowdfunding? Yes, that's also shown. That is also driving it. Well, for example, if you go to a bank for a loan, now more and more these systems are also automated. But there is research that has been done in the past where they really do the experiment by putting a male bank clerk and a female bank clerk in front of a male entrepreneur and a female entrepreneur, and then they see if there is an effect. No, it is it doesn't change anything whether it's a female bank clerk, yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, they have like such, I think, strict guidelines that it's like, it's not them deciding like, I like you, so I give you money. I mean, I hope it's not like that.
No, it's getting more and more objective. Yes.
Yeah, and then when it's like a mixed kind of project, then is it better or worse for it?
Yeah, same. So that's one of the projects that we did research on. Yeah. So we had couples in our crowdfunding campaigns, and then couple would not necessarily be a married couple, right? A married couple would just be business partners or married couple or whatsoever. Because we actually expected, so the research that we've done was based on Dutch data. Mm-hmm. And until 20 years ago, something like that, if you would get married in the Netherlands, the default would be that you would be married under the legal system that everything you own, your spouse would own as well. Okay. So, which would mean also your debt. If you would be indebted, your spouse would be responsible for that debt. Nowadays, that's not the case anymore. Nowadays, the default is you have separation of ownership. But back then, it was not. So we were kind of expecting then if you would provide a loan to an entrepreneur, which is or a married entrepreneur, a couple entrepreneur, you would actually not be providing a loan to one person, but to two. Yeah. So you would maybe expect that then there's a higher chance of repayment, but we did not find any effect there. So for couples,
you don't have to bring your partner, I guess, when you're applying for a loan. I mean, I don't know how it works, but they don't see that who is the partner or something.
No, but in a crowdfunding campaign, you could, right? You could signal. So, for example, because when you have these campaigns on a platform, very often you provide a picture of the entrepreneur. Yeah. And then if it's a couple entrepreneur, you have a picture of the couple, so you know it's the two of them that are actually applying for the loan.
Yeah, okay, now I get it, okay. And just to circle back a little bit to motherhood and entrepreneurship and the work-life balance. Yeah. You mentioned that for mothers, it's better to be an entrepreneur because then they have more influence on their work-life balance, I guess. But is it also for female kind of energy cycle and energy level and I don't know, maybe, I don't want to say temper, but how females work and how much sleep they need. I know that they need a bit more. Is it better fitting to be an entrepreneur or to have a full-time employment?
I only have anecdotal evidence on that, right? We did not, academically, I don't have any proof of what I'm saying, but deciding to be a mompreneur is a combination of elements. It is, and because you have obviously an idea of something that you want to do in terms of work, and this combination of being your own boss, having the flexibility to say, this afternoon there is a soccer game for the kids, so I'm not going to work, I'm going to do something else. And having your financial independence. But it's not everybody feels comfortable with being an entrepreneur. Yeah. So in that respect, then you would rather have a choice. Do I go work full-time? Do I go work part-time? And that choice is not a choice in isolation. It also depends on your household situation. If you have, I think a good example is if you turn it around. So mother is a self-employed individual. In this case, I take an example of being a vet. Yeah. All right. If you're a vet and you have a child, you know you're going to be on call. You have night shifts, you have duties, etc. And there you often see that it's actually the partner who's then going to make the decisions in terms of work balance, like reduce hours, take 1 day a week parental leave, or do some other adjustments to make sure that you can indeed raise your children. So it's rarely a decision that you make on your own outside of the other household considerations that you have. Some mothers just decide if it's possible for their partner to make enough money to provide for everybody, then might just staying at home might be a wonderful solution as well, if that's what suits you and what fits with you.
Yeah. And you're just talking about moms, but usually we have dads as well. So is it the same with dads that like sometimes they decide when they have the kids that, okay, let's set up that business that I was dreaming of for so long?
No, that we did check for, but that we did not find.
So
we did not find any conclusive evidence that entrepreneurship, if you would call it that way, is something that would be existent, or at least I'm not aware of that. And when we checked into our data, we did some explorative research in that respect. We could not find any evidence of anything like that going on.
I mean, I guess it's also like it's a bit different in the dynamics when like a mom is like the woman gets pregnant, and then it's kind of like it's also like it feels entrepreneurial, but and then the dad just announces, now it's the start to set up my new business, and the whole income is like not sacrificed but in danger. So I kind of get it, like wow, like they just want to minimize the risk when So it's maybe actually the reverse for the dads. That's like it's better that you stay at the full-time job and maybe later you can
go for business. Security in that case.
Yeah, exactly. And when we started to set up this episode and schedule, we also talked about your research that you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you introduce it a little bit? Because I think it's really much fitting to this topic today, and also to female entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So the current project we're working on, again, I'm not working on my own, right? I have great colleagues that help me. So we look into the menstrual cycles. So if for the women and also for the men, because what I've learned maybe a little bit the hard way in the past couple of months is that it's a topic which somehow is still difficult, especially for women to talk about. I would have expected that the reluctance would maybe come from the males in society, but it's actually again an example of where women are the biggest impediments to themselves. What we look at is we take the main measures of entrepreneurial orientation, which is innovation, risk-taking, creativity. And then we look at, okay, depending on the cycle and the moment in your menstrual cycle, are you then more risk-taking or risk-averse? Are you more innovative? Are you more creative? What are the things you look at? And then we find a clear link between, we take as a base moment your period week. That would be the start of your cycle. The first day of your period is the start of your cycle. And then up to ovulation, you're in the follicular cycle. And there we see that there is indeed a very strong, significant relationship with innovativeness. So you are more innovative right before you ovulate.
Yeah.
And then after that comes risk-taking and creativity.
Yeah.
So in the sense, how is it important? How does it matter? We're still very much exploring this. So it's the beginning. And what we would like to know is, first of all, is the impact that big that it would change any major decisions that you would make in your company? Or is it sufficient information to be aware of it and to know that when you plan your next negotiation meeting, you might want to plan it a week later because you just feel better and you feel more in line of doing these kind of things. So that's the work we're looking into now. It's not. There has been a lot of research in terms of menstrual cycles already, in terms of competitiveness, bargaining behavior. Consumer behavior has done a lot, and I think that most women can probably relate that when you go shopping, depending on whether you have your period or not, you don't buy the same type of clothes
or groceries.
Or groceries, absolutely. That's also a very good example. I always like to tell my PhD students about research that has been done. So basically, at the moment that you ovulate, and this very important disclaimer, if you're not on contraception, because that's a very big element also of the story, you'll see that your skin is brighter, your hair is shinier, you just feel better. And what research has done, they went to a strip club and they checked for the tips that the dancers would get, and
got more.
The ladies get most tips at the moments they're closest to ovulation. So somehow it also means that your surroundings
it's noticing,
exactly, not in a conscious way, but in an unconscious way, your surroundings actually will notice what's going on. So there is signals there that you communicate. Here in this case it wasn't dancing, right? But you do communicate that somehow with your audience. And what we would like to know is then, okay, and how does that then reflect when you're a female entrepreneur? And maybe does it reflect also differently for different types of female entrepreneurs?
And then you did the study here in...
we did the study here. So we started up the pilot here in Maastricht. So we run the first set of surveys last year with second-year entrepreneurship students. And we just finished the second wave like this year with entrepreneurs. So thanks again for, if any of them is listening, thanks again for answering our questionnaire. And then what we really want to do with this is take it to the next level. So we really would like to follow female entrepreneurs for a longer period of time, ideally with an app, and like get the most accurate information possible and exactly what the impact of this is, and how we can like make sure that also people realize that this is just a fact of life. And coming back to learning the hard way, I presented my work at a conference like last month, where the males in the audience were very interested and asked really good questions, and where one of the comments from one of the first American professors which was there was, if you want equality, we should not be talking about these kind of things because it shows that women react differently in certain periods of the week, of the month. Well, it's just a fact. It's not, how we are. But then you see that there is a lot of reluctance still to address these kind of issues. And to come back at hormone medication and contraceptives. So this also plays a very big role. So up to now, we obviously control for it, but many women, many young women, take the pill or any other kind of birth control device. And that levels out the effects of the hormones. So it makes it even more difficult to measure it there.
But then it's also more, it's not that intense for them, I guess.
It's not that intense for them, or at least it's more difficult to see the variation into that respect. But again, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Of course.
And that is also a reality. Many women take contract, which was also a thing which was really surprising for us when we run this first wave among the students. Like almost half of the students do not take any pill or anything. We did not, like my co-author and myself, we're a generation apart from the current students. We would have actually expected that would be much higher. So that was quite interesting finding as well.
I mean, I think in general, like people are getting more against this kind of hormonal contraceptives. So like I get it. And also, like, when we talk about this variation, do you think that it's more suitable for the full-time job? I mean, I know that you didn't do the research on it yet, but in your opinion right now, is it more suitable for the kind of like entrepreneurial career plan or more for the full-time job?
You mean where
this kind of variation
impact most,
or like when you can, because I think like there is also something like a downside and always like an upside to it. So I feel like if you're questioning that you're more innovative compared to the baseline that men are, or like compared to the time when you have your period, it's always like a question like, who are we comparing it to? But I think like in this sense, like when you have higher variation, maybe it's like better for you to do the entrepreneurship track, or maybe better for you to do the full-time job.
So your baseline is yourself. So that's the, and there also it's a bit difficult. What's then the baseline? So we take the baseline, the being the week of the period, just because it's the easiest way to interpret it all. And I do think that it matters probably more for an entrepreneur than for somebody who has a more full-time wage employment somewhere. Also because the decisions that you take probably have a higher impact if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a self-employed individual, you're the one in charge. You might also be, of course, a CEO or a manager or whatsoever, but it is still something you most of the time take in consultation with a management team, with colleagues, with other individuals. So again, focusing on the smaller sized entrepreneurship venture where the entrepreneur herself plays a key role. Yeah. I think that this aspect is really, really important.
Yeah. So you think that it's more risky?
Well, it's relevant for everybody, right? Yeah. That I really want to emphasize. But knowing it for yourself when you're taking key strategic or commercial decisions, I think that will be very
checking
helpful.
Which phase you're in, so that you know why are you so hostile.
Yeah, exactly. For example, or why your patience is a bit less, or if you have, I don't know. This would be an example where it would suit everybody. Imagine either way you are an HR representative for a bigger company, or you're a female entrepreneur. And in both of the situations, you have to conduct a very difficult conversation with somebody who is not functioning well. Yeah. Then in both situations, I'd say you might want to delay that conversation with a couple of days if you know from yourself that you are.
It's not the best time. Yeah.
It's not the best time. But they're also, not all women react the same. And some have much more difficulties with their period and their cycle than others. I have, out of the evidence that we've gathered in the research, I've also had respondents who say, I have actually no idea. And it's a surprise every month again. And it's fine like that. I feel good like that. And I'd say good for them. And I have others where they really have episodes of severe migraines, severe headache. They feel literally sick days before they have their period. And it really impacts them daily. Yeah. And there is also variation. So it's comparing to yourself and comparing to others. And it's only one element of your entrepreneurial attitude, I'd say.
Yeah, of course. But maybe that could be also like kind of explanation why like women are not striving for, or like most women, let's just say that, like them, and not in general like every woman, but they are not striving for this kind of like high level, like major businesses, because then it's also like the level of responsibility that comes with it, and that you know that in every month you have this fluctuation of capabilities. Then it's kind of, I think it can be scary when you're like, you want to set up a really big business or you want to grow, and then you saw that like previous month I had like migraines for a week or something, and it's like it's really like hard to compete on the market when there are males that don't have that at all.
And then it's already getting close to really a health consideration, not health in the sense that menstrual cycle has nothing to do with health, but health in terms of, are you in good physical health? Yeah. If you know that you have indeed troubles every 4 weeks again with severe migraines, to keep to that example, because I think that's an example that's recurring very much, at least in our findings. You also know that it's going to be extra hard for you to take these type of decisions, and then you might indeed go for security. Yes. That might be an effect.
Yeah, of course. But I think it's like how it works, because then we can give birth to a child. So for some people, it's much more of an advantage than to be able to set up this kind of whole.
It's new human nature. Yeah. It's just like, choice or not, this is what it is.
But do males also have a kind of cycle?
Yes. So males also have kind of a cycle. It's not as pronounced as the female cycle, and they it is more. It's not as, I'll call it, it's not as short as a cycle. It's not a monthly cycle, right? Yeah. But males through their life also have moments where they have more testosterone, less testosterone, etc. And that also impacts. A colleague of mine is looking into this whole like how testosterone affects behavior and decision making, etc. And there's also clear proof that if you have higher testosterone levels, you're more risk taking and you're more daring, and
you're more assertive, okay.
So it does matter for both male and females. It's just that the female cycle is more
recurring on a monthly basis.
More recurring, somehow more obvious, right?
Yeah,
it is more
course,
like there is clear physical evidence of what time at what moment of the cycle you are.
Yeah.
Well, for a male, it's more difficult to see, like, is he peaking in testosterone, yes or no, besides taking a blood sample, for example.
Yeah, okay. Or like just looking at behavior.
Just looking at behavior.
I think you have high testosterone levels, like, yeah, maybe it's a thing. So so we cannot point at any kind of direction when it's more fitting to females. I guess it's also based on like also your drive, because at the end of the day, if you're passionate about something, you can work it out.
Yes, so I think that's the most
yeah.
important element. Being passionate, having the intrinsic motivation, being optimistic of what you're going to do.
And believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself, absolutely. Don't let others tell you something different.
Yeah.
Find a good mentor to help you in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that if we already check those boxes, we're already good on the way to be successful in terms of entrepreneur. Yes.
Yeah. And just as like an outro, have you ever thought about setting up a business for yourself? So for example, you've done this research, you said like you have entrepreneurs in the family and academics. So far you've done the academics part.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of doing the entrepreneur part?
Yes, and I know it's not for me at all. I'll never do it.
Okay.
No, it's also because when I grew up, I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings. I grew up with my parents having the business, my uncle having the business. And I grew up with all the good parts of it and also all the bad parts of it.
Yeah.
And I just know that this is not, like, I have deep respect for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But I just know that this is not for me. I have good friends which are entrepreneurs. I have a very, very good friend of mine. She's the godmother of my daughter. She has a family business that she manages with her brother.
Yeah.
And it's a big road construction company. They have like 150 male employees, which are the construction workers. The job they do is just huge and fantastic and tremendous. And I admire her deeply. It would not be for me.
Yeah, it's completely different. And it's also not, I mean, sometimes you feel like you have more freedom, but on the other hand, you also don't. So it's like you have freedom in the time to decide when you do stuff within a day or something, but you have to. So it's like, it's a bit different than having a full-time employee. You were like more than a full-time employee when you're an entrepreneur. But I also think like sometimes, as a finance student, sometimes I think it pays off a bit more, like in terms of compounding effect when you're an entrepreneur than when you're a full-time employee. So also on the other hand, it's sometimes at some point it's going to pay off if you do your job well. So it does make sense. But you mentioned your godmother that is doing this business, right?
So it's the godmother of my daughter. A good friend of mine, and she's the godmother of my daughter.
Yeah, because I was just about to ask you if you've had any friends, like female friends who like did a really great job as being a mom and an entrepreneur at the same time.
She does.
Yeah, but she does. Yeah,
she does.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing, and I think like entrepreneurship in itself is really scary. But when you're doing it, maybe I guess it's also scary. I'm not an entrepreneur, so I don't have any experience. I'm just talking here, but I guess it's something that you can really grow with, and it's nice that you're doing research in this area, because I think also like because I also found that recently it's really a hyped up topic, the female cycle and cycle syncing and everything. Mm-hmm. So it's nice that you're doing actually research here. But where I'm studying, it's really nice that it's also a topic here. So thank you for coming for this episode today. And thank you for doing this research. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for the good questions.
Yeah.